Hello, my dear friends. Today, Breaking Brain and Zen Mind. Thank you so much, Casey, for your recommendation. And your book is inspiration for my episode. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. Beginner's Mind, what is meaning? In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. People say that practicing Zen is difficult, but there is a misunderstanding as to why. It is not difficult because it is hard to sit in the cross-legged position or to attain enlightenment. It is difficult because it is hard to keep our mind pure and our practice pure in its fundamental sense. To my mind, as a beginner, the most important thing is you are curious all the time. And you know what? I think Zen mind, beginner's mind, and mind someone's who try to find a good way to practice language, to know something new, and try to learn all the time, it's a really good guide. For Zen students, the most important thing is not to be dualistic. Our original mind includes everything within itself. It is always rich and sufficient within itself. You should not lose your self-sufficient state of mind. This doesn't mean a closed mind, but actually an empty mind and a ready mind. If your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything. It is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. If you discriminate too much, you limit yourself. If you are too demanding or too greedy, your mind is not rich and self-sufficient. If we lose our original self-sufficient mind, we will lose all precepts. When your mind becomes demanding, when you long for something, you will end up violating your own precepts. Not to tell lies, not to steal, not to kill, not to be immoral, and so forth. If you keep your original mind, the precepts will keep themselves. In the beginner's mind, there is no thoughts. I have attained something. All self-centered thoughts limit our vast mind. When we have no thought of achievement, no thought of self, we are true beginners. Then we can really learn something. The beginner's mind is the mind of compassion. When our mind is compassionate, it is boundless. There we are always true to ourselves, in sympathy with all beings, and can actually practice. So, the most difficult thing is always to keep your beginner's mind. Control. Control. To give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control him. Even though you try to put people under some control, it is impossible. You cannot do it. The best way to control people is to encourage them to be mischievous. Then they will be in control in its wider sense. To give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control him. So it is with people. First let them do what they want and watch them. This is the best policy. To ignore them is not good. That is the worst policy. The second worst is trying to control them. The best one is to watch them, just to watch them without trying to control them. The same way works for you yourself as well. If you want to obtain perfect calmness in your zazen, you should not be betrayed to be various images you find in your mind. Let them come and let them go. Then they will be under control. But this policy is not so easy. It sounds easy, but it requires some special effort. The true purpose is to see things as they are, to observe things as they are, and to let everything go as it goes. This is to put everything under control in its widest sense. We should try to continue our effort forever, but we should not expect to reach some stage when we will forget all about it. In the Zazen posture, your mind and body have great power to accept things as they are, whether agreeable or disagreeable. After you have practiced for a while, you will realize that it's not possible to make rapid, extraordinary progress. Even though you try very hard, the progress you make is always little by little. It's not like going out in a shower in which you know when you get wet. In a fog, you don't know you are getting wet, but as you keep walking, you get wet little by little. If your mind has ideas of progress, you may say, "Oh, this pace is terrible," but actually it's not. When you get wet in a fog, it's very difficult to dry yourself. So there is no need to worry about progress. It's like studying a foreign language. You cannot do it all of a sudden, but by repeating it over and over, you will master it. We can say either that we make progress little by little, or that we do not even expect to make progress. Just to be sincere and make our full effort in each moment is enough. Of course, whatever we do is the expression of our true nature, but without this practice, it's difficult to realize. It's our human nature to be active and the nature of every existence. As long as we are alive, we are always doing something. But as long as you think, "I'm doing this," or "I have to do this," or "I must attain something special," you are actually not doing anything. When you give up, when you no longer want something, or when you do not try to do anything special, then you do something. When there is no gaining idea in what you do, then you do something. In Zazen, what you are doing isn't for the sake of anything. You may feel as if you are doing something special, but actually it's only the expression of your true nature. It's the activity which appears your inmost desire. But as long as you think you are practicing Zazen for the sake of something, that is not true practice. So, the kind of practice we stress, those cannot become too idealistic. If an artist becomes too idealistic, he will commit suicide, because between his ideal and his actual ability there is a great gap. Because there is no bridge long enough to go across the gap, he will begin to despair. That's the usual spiritual way. But our spiritual way is not so idealistic. In some sense, we should be idealistic. At least we should be interested in making bread, which tastes and looks good. Actually, practice is repeating over and over again until you find out how to become bread. There is no secret in our way, just to practice and put ourselves into the oven is our way. Zen isn't some kind of excitement, but concentration on our usual everyday routine. Usually when you do something, you want to achieve something, you attach to some result. From achievement to non-achievement means to be rid of the unnecessary and bad results of effort. If you do something in the spirit of non-achievement, there is a good quality in it. So, just to do something without any particular effort is enough. When you make some special effort to achieve something, some excessive quality, some extra element is involved in it. You should get rid of excessive things. If your practice is good without being aware of it, you will become proud of your practice. That pride is extra. What you do is good, but something more is added to it. So you should get rid of the something which is extra. This point is very, very important, but usually we are not subtle enough to realize and we go in the wrong direction. Because all of us are doing the same thing, making the same mistake, we don't realize it. So without realizing it, we are making many mistakes and we create problems among us. When we practice, our mind is calm and quite simple, but usually our mind is very busy and complicated, and it is difficult to be concentrated on what we are doing. This is because before we act, we think, and this thinking leaves some trace. Our activity is shadowed by some preconceived idea. The thinking not only leaves some trace or shadow, but also gives us many other notions about other activities and things. These traces and notions make our minds very complicated. When we do something with a quite simple, clear mind, we have no notions or shadows, and our activity is strong and straightforward. But when we do something with a complicated mind, in relation to other things or people or society, our activity becomes very complex. Most people have a double or triple notion in one activity. There is a saying, to catch two birds with one stone. That's what people usually try to do. Because they want to catch too many birds, they find it difficult to be concentrated on one activity, and they may end up not catching any birds at all. Often we think what we have done is good, but it may not actually be so. When we become old, we are often very proud of what we have done. When others listen to someone proudly telling something which he has done, they will feel funny because they know his recollection is one-sided. They know that what he has told them is not exactly what he did. Moreover, if he is proud of what he did, that pride will create some problem for him. Repeating his recollections in this way, his personality will be twisted more and more until he becomes quite a disagreeable, stubborn fellow. This is an example of leaving a trace of one's thinking. We should not forget what we did, but it should be without an extra trace. To leave a trace isn't the same as to remember something. It's necessary to remember what we have done, but we should not become attached to what we have done in some special sense. What we call attachment is just these traces of our thought and activity. Mistakes in practice. It's when your practice is rather greedy that you become discouraged with it. So you should be grateful that you have a sign of warning signal to show you the weak point in your practice. There are several poor ways of practice which you should understand. Usually when you practice, you become very idealistic and you set up an ideal or goal which you strive to attain and fulfill. This is absurd. When you are idealistic, you have some gaining idea within yourself. By the time you attain your ideal or goal, your gaining idea will create another ideal. So as long as your practice is based on a gaining idea and you practice in an idealistic way, you will have no time actually to attain your ideal. Moreover, you will be sacrificing the meat, cornerstone of your practice. Because your attainment is always ahead, you will always be sacrificing yourself now for some ideal in the future. You end up with nothing. This is absurd. It is not adequate practice at all. But even worse than this idealistic attitude is to practice in competition with someone else. This is a poor, shabby kind of practice. If you find some difficulty in your practice, that is the warning that you have some wrong idea, so you have to be careful. But don't give up your practice. Continue it, knowing your weakness. Here there is no gaining idea. Here there is no fixed idea of attainment. You don't say, this is enlightenment or that is not the right practice. Even in wrong practice, when you realize it and continue, there is right practice. Our practice cannot be perfect, but without being discouraged by this, we should continue it. This is the secret of practice. If you understand the cause of conflict as some fixed or on one-side idea, you can find meaning in various practices without being caught by any of them. If you don't realize this point, you will be easily caught by some particular way. You will say, "This is enlightenment, this is perfect practice, this is our way. The rest of the ways are not perfect. This is the best way. This is a big mistake. There is no particular way in true practice. You should find your own way, and you should know what kind of practice you have right now. Knowing both the advantage and disadvantage of some special practice, you can practice in a special way without danger. But if you have a one-sided attitude, you will ignore the disadvantage of the practice, emphasizing only its good part. Eventually, you will discover the worst side of the practice and become discouraged when it's too late. This is silly. We should be grateful that the ancient teachers point out this mistake. Thank you so much. In our way, the point of the angle is always towards ourselves. The purpose of studying Buddhism is not to study Buddhism, but to study ourselves. Communication, without any intentional, fancy way of adjusting yourself to express yourself as you are, is the most important thing. When we say something, our subjective intention or situation is always involved. So there is no perfect word. Some distortion is always present in a statement. When you listen to someone, you should give up all your preconceived ideas and your subjective opinions. You should just listen to him, just observe what his way is. We put very little emphasis on right and wrong or good and bad. We just see things as they are with him and accept them. This is how we communicate with each other. Usually when you listen to some statement, you hear it's a kind of echo of yourself. You are actually listening to your own opinion. If it agrees with your opinion, you may accept it, but if it doesn't, you will reject it, or you may not even really hear it. That is one danger when you listen to someone. The other danger is to be caught by the statement. If you don't understand your master statement in its true sense, you will easily be caught by something which is involved in your subjective opinion, or by some particular way the statement is expressed. You will take what he says only as a statement, without understanding the spirit behind the words. This kind of danger is always there. It's difficult to have good communication between parents and children because parents always have their own intentions. True communication depends upon our being straightforward with one another. When you say something to someone, he may not accept it, but don't try to make him understand intellectually. Don't argue with him, just listen to his objections until he himself finds something wrong with them. This is very interesting. Try not to force your idea on someone, but rather think about it with him. If you feel you have won the discussion, that also is the wrong attitude. Try not to win in the argument, just listen to it. But it's also wrong to behave as if you had lost. Usually when we say something, we are apt to try to sell our teaching or force our idea. But between students, there is no special purpose in speaking or in listening. Sometimes we listen, sometimes we talk. That is all. It's like a greeting. Good morning. Through this kind of communication, we can develop our way. Without accepting the fact that everything changes, we cannot find perfect composure. But unfortunately, although it's true, it's difficult for us to accept it. Because we cannot accept the truth of transiency, we suffer. Teaching which doesn't sound as if it is forcing something on you isn't true teaching. The teaching itself is true and in itself doesn't force anything upon us. But because of our human tendency, we receive that teaching as if something was being forced on us. But whether we feel good or bad about it, this truth exists. If nothing exists, this truth doesn't exist. You should have a general house clean of your mind. If you want to understand Buddhism, it's necessary for you to forget all about your preconceived ideas. That's same when you try to learn something new. Many people these days have begun to feel, at least intellectually, the emptiness of the modern world or the self-contradiction of their culture. Each one of us must make his own true way, and when we do, that way will express the universal way. This is the mystery. When you understand one thing through and through, you understand everything. When you try to understand everything, you will not understand anything. The best way is to understand yourself, and then you will understand everything. So, when you try hard to make your own way, you will help others and you will be helped by others. Before you make your own way, you cannot help anyone and no one can help you. To be independent in this true sense, we have to forget everything which we have in our mind and discover something quite new and different, moment after moment. This is how we live in this world. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you will find something common between Zen and your learning practice. Thank you so much, Casey. Casey was my inspiration for this episode. Take care and stay safe.